Alright, I've already done a few of these, but I'm going to erase this dry board, and this is the final edit of this dry board, so I'm going to go through the whole thing one more time. This is, I guess, backup footage. These are my troubles with the ATtiny. Holdups I found in attempting to program the AT85-20. The same thing applies with the, to the 45. The ATtiny 45 would be pretty much identical to all this information, just half the memory. So the reason why you'd want to use it is it can basically emulate a whole Arduino board in one little 8-pin chip, the whole equivalent of an Arduino board. But of course you've only got, fewer pins. So you have to have enough pins to be able to do what you want to do. So all of this refers back to an MIT thing called High-Low Tech. These are some web pages. And there's two web pages under that heading that involve doing this ATtiny using the Arduino. So you read those two pages. There's also a zip file included with those pages that you can, download from one of those pages. That includes the definitions for the ATtiny stuff, and it's pretty easy to import that file over and put it into your. Let's see, put it into same place examples go into sketches. Actually, you put it into sketches, and then you put it make a folder called hardware, and then you dump these definitions into that folder. Something like that. Anyway, then when you go to tools and then you go to boards, you'll see some new options if you've done it successfully. You'll see all the ATtiny options. There have been some cosmetic changes since the early Arduino versions. So if you look at some of these pages and things look a little different, that's because the Arduino is a different version of what you're using. I'm using 1.03 for these demos. I've got 5, I just haven't put it on yet. Not much difference. So, some things you really need to know is what pins you're going to use. These 3 pins are the ones I'd use first. So if you're using a device, it only needs 2 or 3 pins, then these are the pins to use. D3 or D2 through D4, basically. Then if you need more pins, use D1 and D0. I'm kind of keeping them free for other uses. They're PWMs, and they also are where the serial would be on the regular Arduino. There is no built-in serial functions in this chip, though. You have to use some other routines to make them work. But that's the pins you'd probably be using. I don't know. So I used D1 through D4 in my project coming up here. Now D5, it's possible to use D5, but you have to disable the reset button to do it. And that means you program it once and hope it's right, because you're never going to reprogram it again. So that's the problem of using D5. So you're probably not going to use D5. So really you've got 3 to 5 pins, that you can use. The next thing is when you get one of these chips, by default they're set at 1 megahertz. So you've got to communicate with it with the board set for 1 megahertz. You go into tools and then boards, and then select the 1 megahertz version of the ATtiny 85. And that's real important, because otherwise you're not going to communicate with it. And that was probably my big problem. That's probably what I screwed up in last time. I tried so many different times and ways, though, you'd think I'd have stumbled through. Another little thing is the shift upload, and that's when you hover over upload on the Arduino software. If you press shift, it'll say upload using programmer. You can also get to that through the tools though, but it's a nice little shortcut. Don't ever burn the 20 megahertz bootloader unless you've got a crystal for the chip. Don't burn that setting or you'll brick your chip, which I did to one of my chips. You won't be able to talk to it without the crystal being there. So you're kind of off limits. I'm kind of off limits to that chip till I get a crystal. Maybe I'll be able to revive it. You know, talk to it at 20 megahertz and bring it back down. Or use it with the crystal. I don't know how many pins that uses up though. If you have to use 2 pins for a crystal, or I have to learn about that one. Might be another reason to keep those first 2 pins clear. So my suggestions as a way of going here is set up the ISP. Arduino is an ISP program in Arduino before you put any wires down or connect anything up. Just program the Arduino itself. And then there's a capacitor. They used a 10 UF capacitor. This week I used a 22 UF just to see if that other cap was bad or something. So I could never get it to work with my 10 UF capacitor. But I used the 22 UF and right off the bat I was connecting. So I don't know if that's the problem or if maybe just me learning that I need to talk to it at 1 megahertz. And luckily that worked. So I'm not sure really what worked. But that's what I did last try here, and 22 UF worked fine. Okay, now there's also 3 LEDs and 3 resistors you can add to this ISP circuit for the Arduino, and these are readout LEDs for the software. And the one pin will just give you a, like they call it the heartbeat. It's just a fade. LED that'll be going bright and dim. You know, you'll know the program's at least loaded and running. And then there's one that you probably use a red on. That's the error. And then there's another one that just shows communication when you're uploading successfully. So it's worth putting those 3 LEDs in. They're not mandatory, though most people skip them. But if you're having trouble, then it might be worth it. It helps maybe a little bit. Alright, now what I suggest you do is before you mess around with bootloaders or anything else, just make sure your communication is working. Do just a simple blink program. Use the one from the examples or one you've modified. But real simple. Upload it at the 1 megahertz, you know, with the board set to 1 megahertz. I did that, and to my astonishment, it actually worked. Except that it blinked too fast. So now that I'm in communication, I went and burnt the 8 megahertz bootloader. And then I re-uploaded Blink, you know, with the system set up as 8 megahertz. And now it blinks at the correct rate. And then I loaded my project, which is the ping project, the proximity detector. And of course, in all these things, you've got to make sure you're using pins that are available to you. So when you go to Blink, you can't use pin 13. You'll use D2 or D1, D4, or D3. Use one of those. So it's got to fit in the limits of the ATtiny footprint.